They call her Brownie Mary because she bakes brownies that are in demand. One problem, the brownies are loaded with pot. So Brownie Mary, at 70 years of age, is under arrest. But some are calling her a hero. Bonnie Strauss with our report.
Pleasure to meet you.
Nice meeting you, too.
These days, wherever Mary Rathbun goes in San Francisco, even complete strangers greet her as a friend.
Vote. Register to vote.
Those who know Mary give her good works the highest possible praise.
She's a very courageous, kind, generous person.
Well, I consider her to be the Mother Teresa of San Francisco.
The city of San Francisco even designated a day in her honor for her years of selfless volunteer work on behalf of AIDS patients.
Whereas Mary Rathbun has received the Volunteer of the Year award for the past 3 years.
This 70-year-old retired waitress will tell you she didn't choose this celebrity. No, it was most recently foisted upon her on July 21st. On that morning, this feisty senior citizen was arrested while baking a very special batch of brownies at her friend Steve's house in Sonoma County, California.
And I was up early baking. All of a sudden, 6 or 5 cops' cars, I don't know, 5, I guess, pulled in the driveway, and I looked out the kitchen window and I said, "Get up, Steve, I think we're busted."
They were busted, all right. Mary was caught in possession of 2.5 pounds of marijuana, about to become part of her brownie batter. And the arresting officers, who were only looking for her friend, were surprised to find her there as she was to be found. This was, after all, the Mary Rathbun, alias Brownie Mary, a notorious woman in Northern California since her arrest in 1981 for selling marijuana-laced brownies. Call it pot, hemp, or cannabis, marijuana has been vilified for years. So why is it Brownie Mary, a known trader in the herb, has earned the respect of so many?
The public eye came to her because she's doing something very profound.
Until her arrest in July, Brownie Mary had been giving baked goods to a small group of AIDS patients free of charge. With Social Security payments of $650 a month as her sole support, Mary relied on mostly donated ingredients.
So you felt you were a great source of comfort bringing those brownies?
Of course I was. Of course I was. And if I could get more, I would have made more. And if I can get any again, I'll keep doing it.
Even if it means that you'll wind up in prison?
I'll go to jail for my cause. You damn right I will. I'll go to jail for my cause in a hot second.
Just last month, Mary's cause got a major boost.
We desperately need medical marijuana in the city.
After passionate testimony by Mary and others, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors voted overwhelmingly to urge local law enforcement to be lenient on people caught in possession of marijuana for medical use. And this past weekend, Mary was the life of the party when the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, or NORML, met in San Francisco to focus still more attention on marijuana as medicine.
Mary has great compassion for people who are dying, and they should have at least half as much compassion for the people and allow them to smoke it anyway.
John Wilson is one of Mary's kids, as she calls them, an AIDS victim who says he has benefited from the brownies. Mary says that by eating a half a brownie before and after chemotherapy, her kids avoided the nausea that comes with chemotherapy.
They sail through it and then munch a bunch, which helps them with the wasting syndrome, keeps their weight up.
John credits marijuana for turning things around and preserving his life.
I mean, I lost 50 pounds in over a month's time. It's shortly over a month's time. So that's a quarter of my weight.
Dr. Todd Mikuria, who's been researching medical marijuana for decades, is one of many doctors who believe they should be allowed to prescribe marijuana. He says it isn't lack of medical evidence that's keeping the drug out of the hands of those who need it, it's the government.
We're sending a signal that we're wrong, we're right, and eventually truth will prevail.
And the case of Brownie Mary is sending that signal loud and clear.
It has certainly been somewhat of a shot heard round the world.
But according to the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency, marijuana is illegal because it has such a potential for abuse and is likely to cause more cancer than tobacco and may damage brain and lung tissue. For the moment, this little old lady who looks like everyone's grandmother is out of the brownie business while awaiting trial. Every Monday, she and her friend Josie Donahue walk the beach as they record for posterity the adventures of Brownie Mary, a book Mary hopes to have published soon. So far, the prosecuting attorney in the case, who refused to be interviewed by Inside Edition, has had little to say publicly except that I'm sure she's done some very good things, which is commendable, but what isn't commendable is furnishing, selling, and transporting marijuana. But Mary's attorney has high hopes. If he wins the case by proving that the medical usage of marijuana is more significant than the breaking of the law relating to the possession of marijuana, he would set a new legal precedent.
So through her brave act, through her compassionate courage, we'll be able ultimately to change the law in this area.
How would you like to be remembered one day?
Maybe I'll be remembered as the fat little old lady that helped get rid of these stupid marijuana laws. That would be nice.
A grandmotherly woman is hauled before a judge for baking marijuana brownies intended for AIDS patients.
When Mary Jane Rathbun appeared in court this morning, she held her head high and didn't make apologies. Marijuana advocates wouldn't expect anything less from the woman known as Brownie Mary.
I deliver. Nobody else is doing what Mary's doing to help these patients.
Rudy Agures has throat cancer. He was to receive brownies from Mary the day after she was arrested. He claims she got a bum deal.
She wasn't getting anything out of it except gratitude. You know, people love her.
Standing up and saying that this simply is not right. The people that are dying ought to be able to have a drug that eases their pain.
The issue here is medical marijuana for my kids that I see 100 every Thursday desperately need just to get out of bed, to feel good, to get the munchies, to get rid of the nausea. This is the issue here. I will find another place to bake. I will find another place to stash my marijuana that is donated, and I will continue to bake, and I will continue to give these to my kids that desperately need them.
You aren't afraid of going to jail?
Of course I'm afraid of going to jail. But hey, you know, I've got convictions, Barbara. This is my cause. These are my kids. They're dying. They're going to probably die anyway if we don't get a Manhattan Project or something going so that we get a cure. So I am going to make their life as comfortable as possible while they're still here. For one of the 8 wards in whatever city you live in. Maybe you will change your mind behind medical marijuana.
God has chose me.
God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can. And the wisdom to know the difference.
At midnight on January 27, 1990, the San Francisco police, on a tip that Dennis Perone was selling marijuana, raided his house. 4 ounces of marijuana was found. That marijuana was Jonathan West, who had AIDS, and was using that marijuana as medicine. Dennis, because of his past, was arrested and charged with marijuana for sale. In a subsequent trial, Jonathan, sick and weak, took the stand and stated that the marijuana was his. Charges against Dennis were dropped. Jonathan West died 2 weeks later. It was in his memory that Dennis and his friends collected 16,000 signatures to place a marijuana as medicine initiative on the ballot in San Francisco. On the ballot in November 91, Proposition P, the medical marijuana initiative, won by 80%, the largest percentage vote in San Francisco history. Since that vote, a nation has become more aware of the compassionate use of medicinal marijuana and its positive results with AIDS and cancer patients. This is their story.
A grandmotherly woman is hauled before a judge for baking marijuana brownies intended for AIDS patients.
When Mary Jane Rathbun appeared in court this morning, she held her head high and didn't make apologies. Marijuana advocates wouldn't expect anything less from the woman known as Brownie Mary.
I deliver.
So today, she heard Sonoma County formally charge her with possession and transportation of marijuana for sale. She says she uses it to make brownies for AIDS patients.
Brownie Mary got a standing ovation when she showed up a little later at a supervisor's hearing into medical use of marijuana. The City Services Committee is trying to figure out how to implement Proposition P, a voter-approved initiative to reform marijuana laws and permit its use for nausea relief, as an appetite stimulant, and for pain relief. This crowd was decidedly partisan.
I have used marijuana for over 30 years. I use it for meditation. I use it for pain and depression.
Former Police Commissioner Joe DALY, a recovered cancer patient, said she knew dozens of users of marijuana for medical purposes.
Police officers, community and business leaders, even those in high public office, as well as ordinary citizens, have confided in me and shared their personal experiences.
Only 10 Americans have access to legal, federally supplied medical marijuana. Cancer researcher Dr. Ivan Silverberg pressed for reform.
Major drug companies oppose its use because it would be impossible to patent a plant that anyone can grow. I submit that marijuana is safe, effective, unique, and will produce a major reduction in medical costs.
When my husband was dying a year and a half ago from stomach cancer, they gave him some marijuana sticks to use for his illness. They took them away 2 months before he died because it became the wrong thing to give to dying patients. Obviously, at the time I was outraged, and today I am outraged.
The co-celeb of this movement is a 69-year-old woman named Mary Rathbun, nicknamed Brownie Mary. Federal drug agents arrested Brownie Mary last month in Sonoma County for baking marijuana-laced brownies she gives to AIDS patients at San Francisco General Hospital. She refers to AIDS patients as her kids.
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I was doing nothing wrong. As a matter of fact, I was doing something very right. I was helping my kids. Oh, no, I don't care whether it's legal anyway. It's the most ridiculous law we ever passed in this country.
At the hearing, people with cancer, multiple sclerosis, and epilepsy spoke movingly about how marijuana has helped them.
I've lost 25 pounds over a 2-month period during which I had no ready access to marijuana. I'm not here to ask for your sympathy or your indulgence. I'm here to ask for your help.
Today, some came forward to ask City Hall to tell police to leave them alone. This woman has multiple sclerosis.
and I would like to be able to smoke marijuana without living in fear of someone coming to my door and arresting me and taking me to jail when all I can really do is hope to live from one day to the next.
AIDS patient John Wilson smokes pot to relieve his pain. He says Mary eases suffering for people like him.
Nobody else is doing what Mary's doing to help these patients.
Rudy Agures has throat cancer. He was to receive brownies from Mary the day after she was arrested. He claims she got a bum deal.
She wasn't getting anything out of it except gratitude. You know, people love her.
It's standing up and saying that this simply is not right. The people that are dying ought to be able to have a drug that eases their pain.
Kenny Jenks is the only AIDS patient in the U.S. legally allowed to use marijuana.
You know, it's terrible that I can walk around with a drug that I know is helping me, and my friends and fellow AIDS patients have to act like criminals.
It's not only AIDS and cancer patients who use pot to relieve suffering. Mary Ganoy grows and smokes marijuana to ease the pain of severe birth defects.
That allows me to eat so I can try to gain some of the weight I've lost.
Rathbun may be in the legal hot seat, but she plans to keep her illegal brownies in the fire.
I will find another place to bake. I will find another place to stash my marijuana that is donated, and I will continue to bake, and I will continue to give these to my kids that desperately need them.
You aren't afraid of going to jail?
Of course I'm afraid of going to jail. But hey, you know, I've got convictions, Barbara. This is my cause. These are my kids. They're dying. They're going to probably die anyway if we don't get a Manhattan Project or something going so that we get a cure. So I am going to make their life as comfortable as possible while they're still here.
Like arresting Mother Teresa. It's absolutely ridiculous.
Indeed, the San Francisco Board of Supervisors voted this week to encourage police to be lenient with people who use marijuana for medicinal purposes.
It is medicinal. We made it for serious illnesses, and we provided that a letter from a treating physician would be prima facie evidence of the medicinal purposes.
Though until her case is settled, she is baking only marijuana-free cookies for AIDS patients. She vows her crusade will go on whether the courts find it criminal or compassionate.
On behalf of the people of the city and county of San Francisco, thanks, Mary.
Mary Jane Rathbun was uncharacteristically choked up, but no less at a loss for words today, as Supervisor Terrence Hallinan honored her for her 9 years of volunteer service at General Hospital's AIDS ward.
Oh, yes, indeed. The issue here is medical marijuana for my kids that I see 100 every Thursday desperately need just to get out of bed, to feel good, to get the munchies, to get rid of the nausea. This is the issue here, not me.
It's the baking of marijuana brownies to distribute to AIDS patients that led to Rathbun's arrest last month in Sonoma County.
Free Brownie Mary! Free Brownie Mary!
But she says she has no regrets, saying medical marijuana opponents need only spend one day in her shoes to become believers.
Follow me around Ward 86, just for one day. And then, goddammit, behind following me, volunteer!
God has chose me.
It's no secret that marijuana can help cancer patients by easing the nausea of chemotherapy and stimulating appetite. So for more than a decade, Brownie Mary has been handing out her magic treats to AIDS and cancer patients. Her kids, as she calls them. But Mary's baking days may be over. Federal drug authorities arrested Mary in an alleged dealer's home, where she was pouring over 2 pounds of pot into enough batter for 20 dozen brownies. Brownie Mary feels the law should bend a little when it comes to alternative drug therapies. And she says she'll go to jail to prove her point. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Mary to our show. Thank you. So, let's talk about what happened that day. You're at a friend's house? Yes. You're baking up a batch of your very special brownies for your patients. And what happened?
All of a sudden, the dog starts barking. I look out the kitchen window, and there's 5 cop cars. Yeah. I freaked, literally, and ran to the bedroom and said, "Get up, Steve, I think we're busted." By that I didn't think I knew. No, not.
But Steve was not just your ordinary friend. I mean, Steve has been charged, as I understand it, with raising marijuana plants and selling.
Oh, no.
Oh,
he was never charged with
What is he charged with?
He was charged with under 2 pounds of marijuana for possession and sale.
And sale. And so they arrested you. And Mary, the audience at home and here in the studio must know, you've had prior run-ins with the law.
Yes.
Over the question of marijuana.
Yes.
And you were doing what 10 years ago? What were you convicted of?
I was playing entrepreneur. I thought that's what this country was all about. However, I chose the wrong product.
So, Mary, you were raising plants, and were you raising plants yourself?
Never.
But you were selling marijuana.
I was selling marijuana brownies.
And the reason why you're back, and the reason why you're back in jail or facing jail, is that you have a prior conviction. So it's just not because you're giving brownies laced with marijuana to AIDS and cancer patients. It's because you have a prior record, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. So we want that on the table because that's why you face these charges. And how long could you be put in jail now?
I'm facing 5 years in jail. 5 years out of a 7-year-old bag's life is a lifetime. And compassion in this country is not a crime. The first bust, they had every right to bust me. I had a cottage industry going. However, I was employing 10 people to wrap brownies.
Well, that's not. I don't think you can make a good case for yourself 10 years.
No,
ago.
I'm not trying to. Right. I'm not. Since that bust, I have been baking marijuana brownies to alleviate the pain and suffering of the AIDS patients that I deal with every day of my life, and specifically on Ward 86, 2 days a week out of my life.
And they know that at the hospital, don't they?
Oh, of course.
Everybody around there knows what you're doing.
Of course.
When do you go to court?
I'm not sure, Maury. My attorney knows that. I think the 25th.
Is that when you can be sentenced?
No, that's arraignment. We postponed arraignment because my friend's attorney had a prior commitment.
We don't want to get into your philosophical beliefs, but we should know that you believe in legalization of marijuana.
Yes.
Okay. So so we all should ingest that for a second just to know where you're coming from.
Yes.
But let's talk about these cancer and AIDS patients. Can you see a perceptive difference in them when they eat your cookies?
Of course. I can see it within an hour. When you ingest marijuana, it takes you an hour to come on to it. Most of them come on more quickly because they have not eaten for many days behind the wastings behind the wasting syndrome. And after an hour, when the marijuana kicks in, they feel like, I feel pretty good, and maybe I can get out of bed today. Maybe I could go in the kitchen and make a couple eggs for myself. I'm kind of hungry. And
so they're more active?
Yes. And they don't have to wait till their visiting nurse gets there.
Cancer patients the same way?
Certainly, of course.
You are in danger. You live in a senior citizens complex,
yes.
I understand. Has this put your living there in danger?
No. My lease states that if I am caught with any illegal substance in my apartment, they can terminate my lease within 3 days. Right. However, I've never had anything in my apartment. You know, I'm not too bright, but I'm not nuts either.
Do you use marijuana yourself?
Yes, I use it for my knees. I have 2 new knees.
You just don't use it for pleasure. We'll be back after this, all right? That was a rally in support of Brownie Mary in San Francisco. She was arrested while making brownies laced with marijuana. She planned to give them, and brownies she has given in the past, to AIDS and cancer patients. We're discussing whether marijuana, of course, should be legalized in this context. Please welcome. Dennis Perrone believes it should be legalized. He's the nation's leading crusader for legalizing medical marijuana. Margot Harrison is a drug counselor with the Washington Institute for Addiction here in New York. She says marijuana is a dangerous drug. And Dr. William Elion is an addiction specialist at Hampton Hospital in New Jersey. Let's welcome them to our show. All right? Now,
I fully support what you're doing.
Well, you don't have
I'm
to fully
just
support
curious. You're talking 2 pounds in brownies. That's a couple $1,000s worth of marijuana. Where do you get that money?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear your
Mary,
question.
she's saying this is a lot of marijuana to put in brownies. Where do you get the money to purchase the marijuana to put in the brownies to take to the hospital?
All the marijuana is donated.
I was wondering, do you have, are you some kind of drug dealer? Do you have senior citizens knocking at your door? Can I have some marijuana?
Are you speaking to me, Jeff?
Yes, I am.
She wanted to know, is that just like dealing drugs?
Because of course not.
Okay.
I'm not dealing. I'm giving these to patients who are desperately ill behind chemotherapy treatments and behind the wasting syndrome. These are my kids. They're all of our kids.
All right. Now, doctor, we can be very sympathetic to that. Medicinal purposes, cancer patients, AIDS patients. What's wrong with that?
I think the point is that there's nothing wrong with the caring. And this is really not something about someone like me being against what Mary's doing. She's taking care of people and doing what she can, which is very important.
I'm in 100% agreement. I'm a physician here in Manhattan treating both pulmonary patients with lung disease as well as AIDS patients here in Manhattan. And I can tell you that there is a synthetic form of THC that is available and is easily prescribable by physicians for when it's indicated.
And these would be what, pills?
Pills. And the indications right now, as far as the FDA has found, is that it works, if it's going to work, it works best in treating patients with nausea and vomiting, chemotherapy patients, AIDS patients who are getting medications.
And what is wrong with the brownies?
Harmful side effects. It affects the nervous system. It affects the lungs.
That's not true.
That's not true. He mentions the lungs, but Mary was baking it in brownies. People were eating it.
Yes.
But the point,
Yeah.
They were ingesting it.
Yeah, but what are the side effects of marijuana? Yes, there are. Diarrhea and vomiting is one of the side effects of marijuana. It's the last thing you want to give a patient that's wasting away.
I'm terribly sorry. How many, may I ask you, how many AIDS wards have you been on as a volunteer for 10 years?
I've been involved with treating HIV
have you
patients.
seen die?
I've been involved with HIV patients since 1984, and I've seen many patients with HIV disease as well as with addictive illness die. This drug is powerful. This drug causes people to lead into other drugs, and it's counterproductive if you're immune suppressed, if you have vulnerability to infectious disease.
That is
this drug makes you more vulnerable.
Marinol, the synthetic form, is an excellent appetite stimulant and doesn't have the side effects.
Well, first it's bad, and then it's good. First it's bad, then you make a synthetic form of marijuana. You make a synthetic form of marijuana, then it's good. Then you're saying... Make up your mind, is it good or is it bad?
The synthetic form is not psychoactive.
People are getting high on it anyway. Yes.
Calm
They're
down.
not getting high.
The Drug Enforcement Agency says marijuana as such has no medical value, and yet you synthesize a pill called Marinol, and a company is making billions of dollars off of this when we can have the herb in its natural form.
That's not true either.
Is it good or is it bad? If you synthesize
I'm not going to get into a shouting match.
That's
not shout, Mary.
First off, no drug company is making billions of dollars. The fact is that a drug company...
Wait a second. Before we react that way, wait a second, Doctor. Before we react that way, let's hear the gentleman. Let's let him talk, and let's let him defend his position. Go ahead.
The point is that this has been around for a long time.
They're not making money off it?
It's not a billion-dollar maker, and it's also not something that is being purported.
A multi-million-dollar maker?
$440 million. People at Marinol, they made $440 million last year, and they have a whole marketing strategy to increase appetite stimulation.
All right, wait a second.
If I went to a doctor and got a prescription, I know how much I'm getting, morphine or whatever. You have marijuana. You do not know how much you're consuming into that with those brownies.
How about that, Mary?
How much is going into their body? You have no exact... You're saying you're treating 2 patients and yet you need 2 pounds.
No.
She's not treating 2 patients.
No, wrong. Totally wrong. 2 pounds does not go into 8 dozen brownies.
How do you control the dosage? If someone's eating a brownie...
Because I know exactly what each brownie contains.
Do you know how many brownies each patient eats? Does he finish every brownie?
Mary, I don't know. You may be incriminating yourself here. We'll be back after this. Yeah, stand up, sir. You wanted to say something, yeah.
I don't think she should be sent to jail for trying to help people. She's giving them to sick people who are, like, dying or really sick anyway, and she's just trying to help them. Sarah Lee has nothing on her.
Thank you.
I would like to know if this marijuana is being donated to you. How do you know exactly what's in the marijuana? There could be chemicals in there that may be more harmful.
There are no chemicals in growing marijuana.
Oh, how can you be? Oh, Mary, you don't know.
To grow marijuana.
You really don't know what's in there, do you, Mary?
Chemicals in marijuana.
Mary, you don't know what's in there.
As well as bacteria.
I'm sorry.
As well as bacteria.
Mary checks her marijuana for fungus and
How does she do that? How do you check for fungus
You can't check for
and bacteria? How do you do
look
that?
at it. You look at it, you smoke it, you taste, you smell it, you smell it, and you smell it. When's the last time I saw bacteria? Last time I saw bacteria on
Hold up for a second.
Yes, I'm on chemotherapy, and no one knows what it's like to have cancer until you have it.
That's right.
And even if it's a calming effect, I have what they put Zolfan in my chemotherapy. I'm on adriamycin. And yes, it stops the nausea. It's a wonder drug. It's been out for a year. But when you go home and you're waiting for your next treatment and everything goes through your head, and it's been my second occurrence, please, you have no idea what it's like.
Have you used marijuana?
Yes, I have.
Has it helped?
Yeah, well, it relaxes you. Your head is crazy. You know that you may die. And no one knows that feeling until you have it. And everyone thinks it won't touch them.
So you're glad you have it?
Yes.
Doctor?
What she's describing... I think that's extremely important, And I'm glad that you're describing that, because what you're describing is one of the myriad effects of marijuana. Marijuana doesn't just combat vomiting. It doesn't just have some a benefit with pain. It does have a calming and sedative effect, but that's also one of the big disadvantages. You cannot just pick and choose which of those effects you're going to get. And there are many medicines that are very good, that are probably better in terms of calming, and yet can be controlled much better for that very therapeutic advantage.
Well, your doctors don't give it to you. My first surgery, when I left the hospital, I asked for medication. They told me to take Tylenol.
Admit it, doctor.
My second oncologist told me to calm down and relax because I could get hit by a car.
Admit it, doctor.
And you never know when you're going to die.
Because she's feeling good.
You could more easily get hit by a car or run your car into somebody else when you're high on marijuana.
That is
Because when you leave the house
true.
that day, you don't know that you're going to be hit by that car and killed. I know that I may not be here 4 years from now to see the next Olympics.
We'll be back after this. We want to end up this way. Mary, first of all, I think all of us can sense and understand you're caring for your people and what you want to do for them.
This is my life.
I don't think anybody wants to see you go to jail, but the debate about whether marijuana should be used for these purposes is still out there and will go on. And I thank all of you for joining us today. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us out there, everyone. Until next time, America.
Thank you.
In April 1996, the New York Times wrote, "If marijuana is ever legalized and magic brownie mixes ever appear on the shelves of America's supermarkets, there will be one obvious candidate to become the Betty Crocker, the Mrs. Fields, the Sara Lee of cannabis baking. Her name, as almost any San Franciscan can tell you, is Brownie Mary." Brownie Mary's real name was Mary Jane Rathbun. She was born in Chicago in 1992, and in her 70s, back in the 80s, she began baking marijuana-infused brownies and taking them to the AIDS patients in San Francisco's hospitals. She was arrested 3 times for doing so, but never prosecuted. And in fact, the city of San Francisco named a day in her honor, August 28th, Brownie Mary Day. Even though her brownies helped Mrs. Rathbun endure the pain from advanced arthritis and 2 artificial knees, she ceased baking her magic brownies in the mid-90s. She did play a pivotal and prominent role in the passage of Proposition 215, which legalized marijuana medicinally here in the state of California. Dennis Perone, the father of Proposition 215, wrote that, quote, "Brownie Mary gave her life for her people that she didn't even know, essentially young people with AIDS and people who had been abandoned by their parents, their friends, and their peers. She took them into her heart and into her home, and she cared for them. The Brownie Mary Democratic Club is named in her memory. We hope to further her all the wonderful efforts she made in bringing marijuana to the forefront of public consciousness. If you'd like more information about the Brownie Mary Democratic Club, please go to our website, browniemarydemocrats.org.
Relax your mind, make you feel so fine sometimes. Sometimes you got to relax your mind. Now let's fall asleep.